Hi, welcome. My name's Michelle, and today we're looking at the question, what is contemporary art? So I hope you enjoy it, and let's begin. So, the reason that I'm talking about contemporary art today is this: it's the big sculpture at the end of the High Street on Poole Quay in Dorset. And it was under wraps in 2017 because it was being restored. It had been on the quay since 1991, exposed to the wind and the sea air, so it needed some maintenance to help it keep safe and be able to be enjoyed in years to come. It was unveiled on the 13th of May in 2017, and it was amazing because it would look just like new with the exact shade of paints that the artist who made it prescribed all those years later. The piece is by Sir Anthony Caro, one of Britain's most important and influential sculptors. He died a few years ago, but he loved this area of Dorset and he gifted the sculpture to Poole. So Poole is very lucky, but most of us don't know much about the sculpture. So this series of talks is to help people know and help Poole be proud of this special artwork or gift. So to begin with, I'd like to ask you, what is one of your favourite pieces of art? Something that you like. Could be sculpture, painting, wall, street art. It could be anything. So just pop that in the chat, and that would be lovely to hear what you've got to say. Oh, I see some Banksies and some sunflowers by Van Gogh. Great. Some paintings. So yeah, some interesting mixes. Thanks for sharing. So let's go to question one. What is contemporary art? Yeah, what is it? Here's a quote. Contemporary art is belligerent, it's challenging, and a future flash. Where to start? Walk them around the new Tate 2 hours before it opens and have a little art history. So Tate Modern in London. Has anyone been? Yeah. On their website, it reminds me that contemporary art is not the same as modern art. And what do we mean by that? Contemporary generally refers to artworks of practicing artists, people who are still alive, basically. The Contemporary Art Society started in London in 1910, which is, a long time ago. But what do we mean when we say modern art? We usually mean art created between 1890 and 1960. And if you think about it, there's a really good reason why art changed during that time. Got any ideas? There was an invention just around that time. Okay, great. Yeah, photography. Photography was invented in the 1830s, and it could depict reality really easily and really relatively quickly. It took quite a long time to take a photograph back then, but artists, painters especially, became freer to explore other ideas. So here's a few of them. Isn't that great image? So some people say that modernism, modern art, started with a painting by this man, excuse me, Gustave Courbet. He painted the funeral of his great uncle just as it was, and unintentionally triggered what they called later the death of Romanticism. Romanticism being idealized painting where everything was beautiful, everything was lovely, wonderful. Now here's another key figure, this time a photograph, which you might notice. Other people prefer to point to Edouard Manet. His painting, Déjeuner sur l'herbe, Breakfast on the Grass, where he painted a naked woman at a picnic with two men in suits surrounded by unnaturalistic paintings of the trees, etc. And you may know that image. Look it up on Google. It caused an outrage and it offended critics at the time, but it paved the way for impressionists like Monet, Renoir, Degas, and post-impressionists like Cézanne and Van Gogh to continue to break new grounds and defy traditions, experimenting with new ways of seeing the world and new perspectives. And when you look at sculpture, it's a very dramatic period, going from statues on horseback kind of thing, you've all seen those, to Marcel Duchamp, his ready-mades. He actually put, does anyone know? It's a long time ago. He put a urinal in a gallery and called it art, which was an outrageous idea at the time. Today, we wouldn't bat an eyelid. But anyway, does anyone know who this artist is? These paintings are all by the same artist, but can show you the transition along the way. Yeah, it's Pablo Picasso. So when you look at his work, he was pushing the boundaries into abstraction, into stuff that didn't look like reality or photographs. And then after him, Kandinsky. And then after him, and each artist passing on the baton from one to the next and pushing their work further and experimenting. It's a really exciting period of time. But contemporary means any artistic output that's being made right now. And it tends to mean art made with any expression in any form. So it can be sculpture, it can be sound, it can be moving image, land art. I don't know if you've seen some of the really huge pieces of work in fields, in moving land around, in landscaping, and installation. And light. If you look at the work of James Turrell or any of those, he actually bought a volcano and sculpted it into a light installation, which you can go and visit in Arizona. So contemporary means an explosion in the way of presentation and then a conversation, a discourse about now. So it's something painted now or created now. It's created often by someone who's still alive, although sadly Anthony Caro is dead. And it's usually this century or just the end of the last century, after about 1970, which is what they refer to as contemporary art. And if you think about it, if you yourself are making, painting, making music, making sculpture, making installations, any of that yourself, then you are a contemporary artist. Anyone want to volunteer to be that? Well, let's hope so. Here's some examples that contemporary art can be literally anything. Sometimes contemporary art is just an idea, and other times it's a really powerful emotional experience. So this little can up there, I don't know if you can read it, Piero Manzoni in 1961, he made a little can and labelled it a tin of shit, artist shit. And then Bill Viola in 1993, this huge video screen, bigger than life size, so these figures would surround you in the space and you would walk into a full-on experience. What he said, he called this tiny deaths. It's quite dramatic. And he said, let's walk into this dark space. We'll be quiet and wait. Can you hear that sound? And look, those images suddenly coming into focus and then disappearing. It's like the momentariness of life and the extinguishing of death. Captivating, isn't it? It's clearly excited about bringing this new way of expressing himself. It's a really immersive experience if you get the chance to go to see a Bill Viola. It's amazing. So, if you have any questions, by the way, type them in the chat and I'll answer them at the end. So, where do we start looking at contemporary art? If it's belligerent, which means sort of angry and aggressive, it's challenging and a future flash, where do we find it? Well, why not look online? Yeah. For anyone with the internet, access to the internet or a phone, you can literally hashtag contemporary art. And on the day that I made this presentation, it returned over 8 million images. So I had to narrow it down a bit. And I love this mix of something that you might class as playful, something kind of that you can see what it is. The playful is also quite disturbing in many ways, and also something that you might think is quite intellectual or more about ideas. So there's amazing number of posts. I narrowed this down just to contemporary sculpture, but if you hashtag, put different hashtags in, obviously you get different results. You know better than me. So, and then here I found a contemporary sculpture just off the coast of the Canary Islands, Lanzarote, and it will grow over time. Corals and plants, aquatic plants, will grow on it, so it will keep changing. Fish swim around it, and you have to dive, obviously, to go and see it, or get someone to take a webcam down for you so that you can see it. So, here's a question for you. Love it or loathe it? People get very expressive when they come look at contemporary art. Let's have a look at a few here. Does anyone recognise any of these? Sometimes they're rather weird. They're not always beautiful. They often use mixed media, as they call it, or installation, like this, where the chairs are. Does anyone know who that's by? He's quite famous in Britain. It's Damien Hirst. He also collects butterflies and all sorts of things and uses them. These are obviously flies. You can see them. There's a whole ecosystem in there. The flies have food to eat. They've got places to make their nests or lay their eggs, places to live and exist, and then also a method of death just to keep the numbers under control. So that is their whole world. It's quite disturbing to look at. I found it very personally. It brought up lots of ideas, which is what contemporary art often is just trying to do. You might recognise the one with the wall. It's very famous, and Banksy is very popular as well. Most people have seen a Banksy or know about his work. Who likes it? Yeah, great. But how about the dog? Does anyone know who the dog's by? The huge dog made of flowers as high as an art gallery. It's by Jeff Koons, who works at a huge scale. And then the little deer is by Tracy Emin, another British artist who makes people argue and think and talk and have very engaging conversations about what is and isn't okay to be art. And here's some more. These are my personal favourites. Contemporary art can be beautiful. If you see the gold painting there, that's by Agnes Martin, who was an American-Canadian painter who painted straight lines, grids, and dots. That was her whole vocabulary of the marks she made. Absolutely beautiful paintings, and ones that you definitely need to go and see in person. What about below? Has anyone been to Bilbao in Spain? That's the Guggenheim by one of my favourite architects, Frank Gehry. Can you see the spider on the quay there? That huge spider. That's by Louise Bourgeois. The spider that was at the Tate in London for a while as well. It's massive, and you can stand underneath it and look up at the egg sac underneath. Depends if you like the spiders. And the labyrinths, that's Motoi Yamamoto. He makes labyrinths from salt. All of the white lines are salt, and he basically will spend a few weeks, sometimes longer, putting in these labyrinths, these really delicate labyrinths. He uses a funnel of paper and pours salt in one end and then draws with the other end of the funnel. You can watch videos of him on YouTube, fascinating, of how he just gets all of those lines the same width, the same, they're just beautifully perfect. And then at the end of the, however long the piece is going to live there, at the end they sweep it all up and take all the salt and take it down to the sea, or send it down to the sea and release it back into the sea. So they're very temporary. They're not supposed to last forever. So there you go. Motoi Yamamoto. So the question is, what is contemporary art for? What's it for? What's it do? Anyone know this artist? He's on Channel 4 quite often. So it's it's Grayson Perry. Anyone see his amazing series? This one. These are the tapestry that came out of one of his series, where he went and visited upper class people, rich people, middle class people, and working class people, and had a peek into their worlds and really delved deep into what life was like for them, and asked them loads of questions, and then made these tapestries. He went on his computer and made a whole series of images, brought them all together, and then the tapestry, the computer generated images, were then made into tapestries. And these were on show all around the country. There were 6 of them, so 2 for each of the middle class, upper class, and lower class, working class. So they're great images and very fascinating. I don't know how pleased you'd be if you were one of these people who had turned up in his work. So at best, its function is to reflect back an experience of what it's like to live in the world today through a predominantly visual language. Predominantly visual, but there are lots of artists working with audio and with music, not just the spoken word, sounds, and with other forms. This is called the vanity of small differences. And this is another artist that's been shown in the Tate. It's Wolfgang Tillmans, a contemporary artist. He works in lots of medium. He had his first show at the Tate in 2017, the year that I made this slide deck, and said, it's not about separation, shock, and which a lot of contemporary art is. It's about wanting to do things together. It's about wanting to see things together, and not just seeing things for yourself. So Wolfgang's always been interested in the transformation of the world. And if you want to transform the world, you have to engage with the world. So he does that through photography, through painting, through all sorts of different mediums. It doesn't matter to him what he uses. It's not just about hanging artworks on a wall. He's an artist who's inviting the viewer to look at the world as it is, but from another point of view. Yeah. So where can you find contemporary art right here in your local town or in Poole? We're talking about Poole in Dorset. For anyone that's not from Poole in Dorset, then you'll find your own local art places. So let's give us a few examples of right here. So we've got our local art college. We've got, which is AUB, that's the drawing studio, which was purposely designed by an architect that really understood light and how that has an effect on what you see, Mona Hatoum. And then below that, there's the Dorset Art Weeks. Every 2 years in Dorset, we have one of the largest open studio events in the country, where anyone can grab a map or a brochure or go online and find out which artists have got their studios open. It's a really wide area right through the whole of Dorset, the whole county, and you can go and visit glass blowers, sculptors, ceramic potters, painters, wood carvers, stonemasons, all sorts of artists. There's absolutely hundreds. And there are exhibitions on in local museums and town halls and all sorts of things. And then there's Lighthouse in Poole, which is the largest art centre outside Poole. Most regions have an art centre, or even if it's a small one, which will have a programme of events, and you can meet artists and see their work, little gallery spaces. There's one in Lighthouse in Poole. There's Poole Museum. This is a really great local place to go. Now, a lot of people would find museums a little bit, well, who wants to go to the museum? But they have touring exhibitions that aren't just about old things in historical order. And even the things that are in historical order, if you go and have a bit of a treasure hunt in there, there's some fascinating objects and there's loads of stories behind them. You can see some people on the roof. That's where the cafe is. And you can sit outside and you can get a really great view of sea music and the quay. And like I said, there's an archive you can explore. There's a museum of there's an archive of local newspapers and maps and all sorts of things. You want to do some investigating. And there's lots of contemporary shows. There's Poole Printmakers, which is an artist group, and they sometimes have exhibitions, or you can go and hire their equipment and see what they get up to. And there are local galleries, independent ones that sell art and show artists' work. And also there's, if you want to go a bit further afield, there's a sculpture park, or the two. There is one near Dorchester in Dorset, and there's one up near Salisbury, the New Art Centre, or Roche Court, where you can go and see outdoor sculpture in a park, and it's free to get in, which is great. Here's some local street art, public art. Sea Music is obviously one that's right down on the quay, but has anyone seen these? This one's by Peter Morehouse, and it's outside the library, and it's called Ebb and Flow, and the letters will move around in the dark. And then there's another one here, which is in the High Street, by Simon Watkinson. This was put in 2009, and you can only see it at night. Obviously, the neon strips light up, and the lines of light mark out the plot sizes where the old houses and shops used to be. So when they knocked them down to widen the High Street, make it more user-friendly, they put the trees in and they left the spaces in so that you can, like a little memory of the place. So it's always been a social area. It's been a market and places where people went to buy things. And now it's a performance area as well. There are often buskers, and if anyone's been to Light Up Poole, the Digital Arts Festival in the winter, this is always part of it, and they often put a piece in here. So yeah, you have to go after dark by the looks of things. So, and of course, Sea Music, which obviously looks completely different there. You can see the cranes in the background, and the platform where there's two platforms, and you can get right up and have a really good look at the sculpture. It's our own Angel of the North, in a way. Has anyone seen the Angel of the North? Just off the M1, really glamorous, another glamorous place to put art. And the next talk I'll be giving is about who or what public art, i.e. art that you just go and visit and it's free to see, is for. So I hope you've enjoyed looking at these images, and I hope it's an inspiration to go and have a look for some more, and also to make some yourself, because a lot of people when looking at art, we'll say, oh, yeah, I think I could do better than that, or I think I could do something like that. Or just the idea of making something can be inspired by looking at someone else's work. There's a phrase, steal like an artist, and I encourage all of you to do that. So go and have a look at some art and really enjoy it, I hope. So thank you.